Remember when silent movie star Gene Acker married the original Latin lover Rudolph Valentino in what is considered one of the earliest lavender marriages in the history of Hollywood? I do. It was 1919. The Grand Canyon became a national park, prohibition was ratified, pepperoni was invented, and struggling actor 24-year-old Rudolph Valentino met accomplished actress 27-year-old Jean Acker at a party. Rudolph Valentino arrived on Ellis Island from Italy at the age of 18 on December 23, 1913. His time in New York was interesting. He worked odd jobs, but eventually found himself living on the streets. At least until a local restaurateur hired Rudolph to dance the tango for $50 a week. That's around $929 today. But then he got involved in another couple's unhappy marriage, which landed him in jail for a few days, and then the ex-wife shot her husband, and Rudolph's ties to her made it even more difficult for him to get a job. So he did what anyone would do in that situation, and he headed west. Like Fievel. After arriving in the City of Angels, he started teaching dance and built up quite the clientele. Eventually, he was able to secure a room on Sunset Boulevard and started auditioning for movies. And while he managed to land small roles, he continued being typecast in heavy roles as the villain, the gangster. Then he met Jean Acker. Jean had been a vaudeville actress prior to moving to LA from New Jersey. And I know that's not how you say it, it's a joke. The 27-year-old became the protege of well-known actress Alla Nazimova. Alla ran the Garden of Alla Hotel, a Hollywood hotspot in its heyday, and is credited for coining the term sewing circle. What was a sewing circle? Well, it was code for a local group of lesbian and bisexual actresses in LA that Alla was very much a part of. Now, while Alla may have been married to a man, her relationship with Jean became much more than that of mentor and mentee. But still, when Jean met Rudolph at a party in 1919, she took a liking to him. The pair dated for 2 months before getting married on November 6th of that year. And while their courtship may have seemed short, their marriage was much shorter. So short, in fact, that the Guinness Book of World Records has deemed it Hollywood's shortest marriage. Sorry to Brittany and Kim, you didn't win this one. For on the night of their wedding, Jean slammed the door to their hotel room in Rudolph's face, locking her new husband out of their marital suite. He knocked for 20 minutes and then went home. Their marriage was never consummated. Shockingly, the pair separated shortly thereafter, but remained married until 1921 when Jean sued Rudolph for divorce, citing desertion. I mean, I guess he did leave the locked hotel room. Their divorce was granted and Jean received alimony. That same year, Rudolph had landed his breakout role dancing the tango in Four Horsemen. He also appeared in Uncharted Seas, where he met actress Natasha Rambova, whose real name was Winifred Shaughnessy of Salt Lake City, Utah. And if you're wondering if Hollywood was always as incestuous as it is today, the answer would be yes. Winnie and Rudolph struck up a love match while working together on Alla Nazimova's film Camille. Winnie was also a protege of Alla. Rudolph and Winnie were married on May 13th, 1922 in Mexico. However, Rudolph mucked up. He mucked up big time. See, Californian law required you to be divorced for 1 full year before getting remarried, and Rudolph didn't do that. So the minute he landed in the US, he was arrested for bigamy. His studio refused to post bail, and so his friends cobbled together enough cash to get him out of the clink. Since neither of them wanted another charge of bigamy, they lived in separate apartments with roommates until Rudolph had been officially divorced for a year. They were remarried on March 14th, 1923 in Indiana. Now, if this were a movie, the happy couple would laugh about their rocky beginnings and would be in love forever, but life is not a movie, and that is definitely not what happened here. Everyone in Rudolph's life strongly disliked his new wife to the point where she was eventually banned from sets he was working on, like it was written into the contracts. She wasn't allowed on set. The pair ultimately divorced in 1925. Their relationship was filled with so much animosity that Rudolph left her a single dollar in his will. And while inflation is currently out of control, that still would only amount to $18.37 today. But it wouldn't be long before she got that $1. On August 15, 1926, Rudolph collapsed at the Hotel Ambassador in Manhattan. He was initially treated for appendicitis and gastric ulcers. After a surgery, he developed peritonitis. And while doctors were initially hopeful that he would be okay, by August 21st, his condition had deteriorated. On August 23rd, Rudolph lapsed into a coma and he never woke up. He passed away at 31 years old. It was later ruled that he had contracted sepsis. It is estimated over 100,000 fans lined the streets of Manhattan to pay their respects to Rudolph Valentino. People rioted when they couldn't get into the funeral home. What I do think is quite interesting is that thousands of women literally were beating down the door of the original Latin lover who was once quoted as saying, "The women I love don't love me. The others don't matter." But what about Jean? Well, she sued old Rudy again after the divorce for the right to call herself Mrs. Rudolph Valentino. While she had been the bigger star at the time of their marriage, Rudolph had made quite a name for himself afterwards, and she wanted the weight of that name. And she was credited under it in her 1923 film, The Woman in Chains. Apparently, Rudolph was pretty mad at Jean for years after their marriage, but the two ultimately reconciled shortly before his passing. After their divorce, she was engaged to a marquis in Spain, and then she dated an Egyptian magician. She was impressed by his sleight of hand. She was also allegedly the mistress for politician William Delahanty, who she tried to sue in 1930 after she lost everything in the stock market crash of 1929. She claimed that he had offered to pay her $18,400 a year if she gave up her film career. She lost. But I don't blame her for trying. That would have been around $360,000 a year in today's money. A lot of money. She then met former Ziegfeld Follies girl Chloe Carter. Chloe had been married to songwriter Harry Rubin. The pair were wed in 1930, but by 1934, Chloe had filed for divorce. She told the court that Harry had hit her. Jean was her witness. And in a world where their love wasn't allowed to be in the spotlight, Chloe and Jean continued accepting bit parts and roles as extras. The pair purchased a home at 2148 Fox Hills Drive, which they eventually divided into a duplex for extra income. Chloe would eventually get her beautician's license, and the two would continue taking whatever work they could get in Hollywood. They were together until the very end, when Jean passed away from natural causes on October 16, 1978, at the age of 85. While Chloe had to live another 15 years without Jean, she passed away at 100, and the two rest peacefully next to each other at the Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. But what happened the night of Jean's wedding to Rudolph? Why did she lock him out? Well, some say that he told her he had gonorrhea, and she was like, I'm not sleeping with you. Others say that Jean was trapped in a love triangle with Alla and actress Grace Darmont, and that she had wanted out. Or maybe she immediately regretted marrying Rudolph and went back to Grace. While we'll never really know why Jean made that particular choice, we do know that the stigma around sexuality in Hollywood at the time made her feel like she had to hide who she was. A world that would have preferred that Jean and Chloe go down in history simply as roommates. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this one. If you did, please save it and share it with your friends. It really does help. Good day, and may the cult be with you.